This video is sponsored by Sunflex UK. If you watch the channel regularly, you know that I offer consultations to people with properties in the UK, and sometimes I make videos about those properties. These two houses are on the Isle of Skye, off the west coast of Scotland, and the client needed my help deciding which one to buy. They lived in England but wanted to move to the island, and they approached me a few months back to discuss this house, and while it looks pretty, the main attraction was that the seller had dropped the price. A survey reported that the house had evidence of damp and rot. Now, this is usually a red flag when buying a house, but in this case it didn't bother the client. You see, they needed a home that's wheelchair accessible. Taking this place apart and putting it back together would allow them to create a house that exactly suited their needs. The existing layout with all the bedrooms on the upper floor wasn't going to work for this client, so redesigning the house would also involve enlarging the ground floor to create at least one accessible bedroom. But this style of house is not easy to extend because the central hall acts like a hub of a wheel and each of the rooms are like spokes. An extension would mean having a room off one of the other rooms, not off the central hall itself. It's not impossible, but it won't flow very well. If we could get around these problems, the old stone walls of the house could be kept and a new design could be dropped into the existing shell. I've done this before and it's a great way to add architectural interest to a building by contrasting the new and the old. Someone would have to double check the stability of those old walls, but in theory this was feasible. The real problem was the budget. After buying the house, they would have about £200,000 to spend on this project. Now that's a lot of money in anyone's book, but I advised them that it would probably not cover taking apart the house and totally redesigning the layout, and it certainly would not cover making the house larger as well. I'm based in Scotland and I visited Skye a couple of times, but never done any work outside the Edinburgh and Fife area. I have friends in the industry with experience in this part of Scotland and they tell me it can be even more expensive to build in remote communities than in big cities. Transportation is a major factor driving up the price of materials. Skilled tradespeople are often hard to find, so their labour costs are high. It turns out there isn't an island discount. So the client decided to keep looking, and a few months later they booked another consultation with me on the Real Life Architect website. I've put a link in the description. This property is also situated near the coast, but it's a much more recent construction and it's all on one level, so that takes care of the wheelchair accessibility issues. And just look at that view. And then take a look at the floor plan. Every bedroom has its own ensuite. The house doesn't have a common bathroom. You see, this wasn't a family home, it was a guest house. Skye is full of them, and my client would need to change the layout to make this more family friendly. Imagine if they had friends over for the evening. If they needed a bathroom, they would have to go into a bedroom and use an ensuite. On the plus side, I don't think any of these internal walls are load bearing. Look at this photo taken inside the garage. The roof is formed from a prefabricated truss. These large triangles made from timber are formed in a factory, put on a lorry and then craned into place on site. They span the entire width of the house from one external wall to the other and they don't rest on the internal partitions, meaning you can change the layout without bringing the house down. My client wanted to create a larger open plan living area with a wow factor. They wanted to create a taller space in their living area and asked about removing the ceiling. I told them this was feasible, but unless they were prepared to spend serious money, they would have to keep the existing timber trusses. And I suggested they could use lime wash to stain the timber a pale white colour. I haven't done this on my own projects, but I have seen it elsewhere, and it makes otherwise cheap timber look much better. They would need to insulate the underside of the roof, and they would need to account for the sloping part of the truss being exposed to the cold, so this roof would need extra insulation to compensate for what's known as cold bridging. But it can be done. The clients also wanted to create a large window or patio door by combining these two existing openings to take advantage of that wonderful view. This is feasible, but a large steel beam would need to be inserted here to make it work. All the work my client described, changing the layout, increasing the height of the ceiling and opening up the wall to make a larger patio door, would all require building regulations approval. The additional heat loss from the extra glass has to be taken into account. Now the easy way to work this out is using the 25% method. The amount of openings in the house, that is doors, windows and roof lights, should not exceed 25% of the floor area of the house. The first thing to do is measure the area of the existing doors and windows, check it against the area of the habitable part of the house, that does not include the garage, and see if it is less than 25%. If so, you can easily increase the opening up to 25%. They could also close up some existing windows, thus giving more to play with for the larger opening with a view. And this is a good time to mention the sponsor of today's video. Sunflex UK design and manufacture high-quality aluminium doors and windows in the UK. I've made several videos about their products, from sliding patio doors, bifold doors and corner pocket doors. I've used Sunflex products on many of my own projects, and they offer a great balance between cost and quality. Check out this video I made, which includes the cost to supply and fit their doors. I've put a link up here and also in the description. The final thing my client had to consider was the entrance. The existing front door is on the opposite side of the house from the road. You can see the garage door is here, but the entrance door is all the way around the side. It also comes into a house through a narrow porch, turns 90 degrees and goes down a hallway. I advise my client that if they're making an open plan space, they should enter into that space directly, and the entrance should be on the side you approach the house from the road, just to make it easier. I also told them not to feel tied by the location of the existing kitchen. Just because the drainage is here now does not mean you have to keep the kitchen there. These things can be changed. So there you have it. This is the kind of thing I help people with when they are looking to buy a house. Often it's just to discuss your options, check your ideas and assess your budget. If you would like to speak to me about a property in the UK, you can book a consultation on the reallifearchitect.co.uk website. Please read the terms and conditions before you book, and check out this playlist of videos I made about other properties I have consulted on. My name is Neil, and I regularly make videos about the reality of altering private homes in the UK, as well as content about the construction industry and architecture profession. If you like the sound of that, please subscribe to the channel to keep up to date.